Welcome, pudding people, to another episode of Everybody Loves Pudding. Today, I have a fantastic guest to talk to. He's a producer, he's an actor, he's a writer, he is a man about the world. We have Mr. Martin Harris with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's exciting.
I have to say, your story is really interesting to me. If there are, I know there's going to be a lot of people that are not completely familiar with where you came from to where you've gone. It's such a really interesting transition. You started more in the realm of being a sports writer. Is that correct?
It's actually almost correct. So I started as a musician, and as a kid, I wanted to be a rock star, and I had a band. And the
Ooh.
band was like a progressive metal kind of music that I envisioned. I was the main lyricist, and I composed some stuff without knowing how to write it. So I would just give a hook, and people would be playing the music. But at some point, it was 1994, and I was at the time living in Poland, although part of my childhood is in Germany. In 1994, it's when the grunge came to its prominence. And now I'm a huge fan, but back then, that was the source of my conflict with the guitar guy, because he wanted to play dirty sounds. I wanted to play clean sounds like Black Sabbath, for example.
Right.
And so the band stopped, and at the age of 18, I felt like I don't know what to do with myself in my life. I felt like I'm 18, I should know, and I didn't. And the label asked me to, you're a lyricist, you're a good writer. Why don't you write for us some reviews for the stuff that we release? So I did that occasionally, but I couldn't really support myself by doing that. And within a year, I think somebody told me, well, you always liked sports, because I did. You're into NBA basketball, you're into soccer. Why don't you write about that? It's a good career. And that person was right, because within a year I was already getting a lot of offers. I was already working for several media outlets, and I just went with the flow and started coming to America to report on the NBA, and it felt good. But around like when I was 28, 29, I felt like repetitive about it. I felt like I accomplished everything I wanted to. It might sound a little arrogant, but that's not the case. It was more like it didn't feel like something that I want to do for the rest of my life.
That definitely makes sense. Now, okay, so progressive metal, and you talked a little bit about your influences that you like, just very briefly. Who were the to you, who were the metal gods? Who were those musicians that's like, if I was going to be anybody, this is who I wanted to be, and this is how I wanted my sound? Was it like Black Sabbath? Was it going to be something, when you say progressive, you sometimes get elements of like Rush in there? Who were the influences that you thought, this is where my sound comes from?
It's funny that you mentioned Rush, because that was the first review I wrote for the label when they asked me to write. They released Rush Counterparts, I remember, and I took it home and I did the review. That was the first thing I've written. But so my father is a professor of history of arts. When in my early childhood, I was sure, and I was tailored in the future to be that guy. I was sure I'm also going to be a professor of history. So I was reading a lot of books. I was winning all the Olympics. And then I think I was 12 when someone gave me Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon. And that changed my life. I couldn't stop listening to it. I couldn't stop listening to it. And then I listened to Atom Heart Mother, then Wish You Were Here. The Wall wasn't that much of my, it wasn't my favorite one, but I've listened to that one too. Animals and Amagama, and I couldn't stop. And then Genesis, King Crimson, Gentle Giant. So I was fully progressive. But while I hit like 15 years old, then I started listening to Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, those bands. And my initial response to that is that I want to combine both styles. I want to do something that I didn't know it's being made already, like bands like Dream Theater, for example.
Right.
And that was the type of music I wanted to do. I didn't know Dream Theater at the time, but I wanted to combine progressive rock with heavy metal sound.
Now, for those of our younger listeners that are maybe not completely familiar with some of these early influences, you say the word metal today, and it conjures a drastically different image and feeling. Just kind of
Yeah,
eating
yeah,
the microphone. But
yeah.
in the earlier days, it was a little more. It was a little more, I don't want to say raw, but it was still in its infancy. So it was still developing into the 20 or 30 different subcategories of metal that eventually were what came out of it. Now, the name of your band, was that an homage to anything by chance? Because when I hear Army of Darkness, the first thing I think of is Evil Dead.
You know, no, what I was thinking at the time, because I was reading a lot of like dark novels, and I was writing a dark lyrics. It was more the darkness, not as a, you know, hell and devil and that kind of stuff. It was more like a poetic homage to certain feelings, to like being sensitive, being like in the dark and listening to the music, listening to the nature, you know, like more that type of darkness than like being on the dark side of life. Darth Vader kind of a way. No.
Yeah, I just had to ask because especially my co-host would normally be with me at this point, but his favorite one of his favorite series of horror films is the Evil Dead series. And as soon as I saw the Army of Darkness, he said, "You have to ask him about this." Like, I don't think it's connected, but I'm going to check just to be sure.
Yeah. No, I know it's somebody asked me a few times about a specific film that Army of Darkness is related to. I forgot what film. Wizard of Oz.
That is the name of the film. It's the third in the Evil Dead franchise.
Yeah, here you go. So yeah, so not that, more like towards dark novels, like Joseph Conrad, Edgar Allan Poe, more there than I would say a horror film genre. And definitely nothing satanic, nothing devilish. That wasn't the part of heavy metal that attracted me, more the sound than actually, you know. And listen, I met the guy who is the leader of Behemoth once, and and he was telling me that it's just for fun. He doesn't really believe in that. So,
well, depending upon who you talk to, it may be considered to be more a sin if you said you were more of a hair metal and kind of person and went that direction. But
hair metal without hair. Although at the time I did have long hair. At the time I did.
All right. So, all right, you've gotten into writing about sports at this point and become very much into it. You wrote a couple of a couple of books even about the subject. And it made me wonder, there are a lot of people that are very much in tune with, or very much, I don't want to say obsessed, but sports play a major role in their life and how they see things. As a subject, what about sports, specifically the NBA? What calls to you? What is that siren song? Why is it so interesting to write about that particular subject?
I was late to the game in a way, because at the age of 15, I was the only guy in my class in high school who didn't like basketball, and our teacher wanted us to play basketball all the time, and I couldn't, and I didn't like that. I wanted to play soccer. I was all about soccer, 100%. I even trained at the junior level soccer in my hometown, and I like to play a lot, and I was actually pretty good. But when I was 16, I had surgery for my nose, and I was in the hospital for 10 days. And friends brought some magazines. It was called Magic Basketball. There were magazines about NBA basketball, and I'm like, I had some time. I'll try to figure out, like, what is it all about? Why people are so crazy about it? And at the same time, just to argue with my friends from my high school, who were all huge Michael Jordan fans and Chicago Bulls fans, I picked Houston Rockets as my team to root for, and they were winning championships. And I was, giving them a hard time about it. And progressively, I got more into it. and I also learned English. So I thought when I started getting into sports and sports writing that NBA basketball could be something that I want to explore. And within a year, I was like fully on board. And the more, like the deeper in the woods, the darker it got, because I got fully on board with the NBA basketball. And in 1998, I was sent to New York for All-Star Weekend. That's where I met Kobe Bryant, and I saw him playing against Michael Jordan. And since that moment, it was like the number one thing for me for at least a decade.
Well, and seeing it in person is drastically different than reading about it or watching it on television. That in-person experience, it has a whole different flavor. It has a whole different impact on you when you're actually able to be there.
100%. Plus, I was shocked, seeing those guys on TV back in Poland and reading magazines. And then I get my media pass and I go to the locker room and I can talk to them before and after the game. That was almost surreal. My hands were shaking. I remember one of the first guys I interviewed was Shawn Kemp, who was at the time at the top of his game or close to it. It was his first season with the Cavs. And after the end of the conversation, which I think he enjoyed, he reached out a handshake, and I was so timid that I just turned my back and walked away because I was like, what do I do? And yeah, so that was my first experience with the NBA basketball. I took a photo with Akeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler, both of them in one photo, and I still have that photo. It was in February 1998. They were both playing for the Rockets, and Charles Barkley was playing for the Rockets. I had a little conversation with Charles Barkley after the game, which was also kind of unusual conversation. I remember he was surrounded by media. They played the New York Knicks, and there was one guy I knew from TV, a popular TV reporter, asked him a question. I remember Charles Barkley turning his head, and it's the most stupid question I've ever heard in my entire life. While on air,
he was never.
Yeah, and then I asked a question. I said, "I'm from Polish basketball magazine," and he's like, "Oh, you're from Polish basketball magazine? Finally, someone intelligent. All right, guys, bye. Let's talk." It was incredible. It was incredible. Yeah.
So,
incredible.
Did you ever? Well, okay, I'm going to rewind that back just a moment. My areas of interest often don't intersect into sports as much as some of my friends, and I have used a particular comparison to occasionally irk several of them. The friends of mine that are fans of soccer, or the friends of mine that are fans of basketball. I love to tell them that it's the exact same game. To just say, hey, well, they're just using different appendages. It's the same basic rules. And that will always just drive them into a frenzy. It's completely different. The strategies are completely different.
You know what else I was shocked by? Because we didn't have in Europe something called locker room access, that we could get into the locker room before and prior to the game and after the game. The first time I went to the locker room, it was Phoenix Suns playing in Meadowlands against New Jersey Nets. And there were a bunch of female reporters coming to the locker room, and the guys were butt naked in the locker room, and nobody gave it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was, for me, it was shocking. I was probably the only one person shocked that you had like 15 female reporters and guys were walking around naked in the locker room.
That would be a little surreal. So when you're responsible for covering these games, for those of us that have not been on this, we're the consumers, we're the ones that watch the games, we're the ones that read the reporting. What is something that you didn't expect to be part of what you had to do in order to get these stories written before you took the role? You say, okay, I'm going to be a reporter. What's maybe something that surprised you as part of that job?
Well, first of all, how open they all were to talk to you. Of course, it came with the territory. Some conversations you could have with European athletes were more substantial in terms of them opening up and saying what they really feel. And it got actually significantly worse. Years later, especially now, I'm not doing this job anymore, and I don't have the career, but I still have a couple of friends who are sports writers. You know, like right now, everything is filtered through PR, filtered through their trained to say certain formulas and certain things, and there's no more personal connection. That's why this job also partially maybe became not interesting for me, because I, you know, like whatever I do in my life, I'm passionate about. I don't want to do things that I'm not passionate about. And even if sometimes it's up and down, you don't, you know, maybe if you work for a corporation and you climbed up and you get certain amount of money every month, gives you some sense of security. My lifestyle and my path is maybe more chaotic in terms of earnings. You know, I did fine in life overall. I would say I did pretty well, but it's just I make decision based on what I really want to do instead of what is the most rational thing to do. Therefore, you know, in 1998, I could see the difference between like regular conversations with let's say NBA players and some athletes in Europe, or even some soccer players in the United States, where there was not that much control over them, like what they're allowed to say. Although I did have some interviews where people opened up completely, and I cherished that. That was the best part of it, to get to know a person. And I think my transition to become an actor later, that experience of trying to figure out who that person is, trying to figure out what's the truth in the story, trying to figure out what the situation really is instead of what they're trying to tell you, but you have to have your own opinion, like what's the truth, what is really happening. I think that quality translated into acting work, because that's what you do when you research for your part. You know, you want to give the truthful portrait of the person or a situation, and it comes from being truthful to your craft. Also, before, when I was a reporter, sometimes you get into trouble because I wasn't compromising, really. No, I was always trying to paint the right picture. Not the right picture for the people who wanted me to the right picture, but the right picture for the readers. Like I was always, my loyalty was towards readers, and my loyalty is towards audience in the first place.
How much traveling did they have you do when you were covering all of these games? Was this kind of, I'm on the road every weekend? Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes I had to, especially at the beginning, I had to pay myself for part of it, you know, because I would go, let's say they would send me to New York, give me a plane ticket and like small budget. But out of the pocket, I would go to Philadelphia to see the Sixers. I would go to Washington, you know, to see the Wizards against the Bulls. I would go an extra mile to see more, to experience more, to learn more, to have more opportunities to do something. And I would always have a network of collaborations where I could do materials and send them to 4 or 5 different outlets, which would compensate me on me spending, you know, for those trips. But I always try to see as much as possible.
So you never had any issues with, like, I know a lot of companies trying to non-compete sort of things. In this industry, was it not quite so tight? You could.
No, it was. But for, let's say I was sent by a Polish newspaper, I could still do interviews, sell them to, let's say, Japan or Germany or South Africa. If I got lucky, I could still do that. I could still give a short correspondence to a TV on the phone, or to a radio, or to like a basketball magazine. Later, I could write like a column, you know. So I wasn't making a lot, but it was a decent living, and substantially it became better. At some point, I had my own talk show. I was both broadcaster and writer. I was, you know, writing to, let's say, Polish Playboy month after month. And yeah, and it all added up. I had financially, I was doing very, very well.
All right. So one more question about the sports broadcasting sort of a thing. Because sports are as big as they are, they touch so many elements and aspects of everything else. There's this cross cultural thing that goes along with it. That means that often, if you're going to be covering these teams, that you're going to run into other people, surprisingly too. who's maybe one of the more interesting people that you might have run into on accident covering one of these games?
That's one of those questions that you would like to have some time with to think about. Well, definitely meeting David Beckham for the first time in a men's bathroom at the Lakers game, that was surreal. I'm looking to my left and it's David Beckham, and at the time one of the most popular athletes in the world, and we were both doing the men thing in the half of a basketball game. So at this one moment we were, you know, at the same level, two human beings pissing.
Keep looking forward. Don't say anything. Keep looking forward.
Exactly. I'm not gonna tell you what I saw. And also meeting Kobe Bryant for the first time, and then becoming like distant friends with him, and getting the life advice from him in 2007 that pretty much decided that I moved to Los Angeles and started pursuing acting. That was a game changer for me. I've been to some wild parties as in my early 20s with soccer players. Remember one time I was dating a Russian girl. She was like a Russian model in my early 20s, and I took her to a New Year's Eve party in a Polish in the north of Poland, which was with Polish soccer players, and they gave us local alcohol that was 70% strong.
Ooh.
But it was sweet, so you couldn't taste it. And I remember she was drinking the same amount of alcohol as everybody else, and those were like Polish national team soccer players, big guys. We're all falling down under the table, and she was the only one sober at the end.
That's impressive.
Yeah, that is impressive.
Okay, so one of the other things that I saw that I thought was really interesting is that you have some history dealing with producing comedy as well as that. So how did you get into that aspect of work?
Well, that's a very good question, because I'm still sometimes thinking about it. You know, how did that happen? It was such a weird 4 years of me doing that, and I could imagine. So when I decided that I want to try acting, you know, you have this incredible confidence. Like every actor who comes to Los Angeles thinks it's gonna happen within a year, and everything, it's easy, and you don't think it's easy, but you don't think, you know, how difficult it is in the moment, and how unpredictable it is, and that it can change either way at any given moment. So knowing that the sports writing career, the sports broadcasting career, I was making very fast moves and very fast steps forward. Every time I had an idea to do something, it was pretty much a flawless ride to the top without any setbacks. I felt it's going to be the same way with acting, and it wasn't after 2 years, which for me was a lot, 2 years. And I know now that it's nothing. Especially when you start in your early 30s and you have to get rid of some bad habits you have in front of the camera. So I started having my doubts, and I went to Stella Adler Academy for 1 year. Then I went to Beverly Hills Playhouse, for 1 year, and then I went to study with Judith Weston, who had this actors directors lab, and she told me, why don't you try stand-up comedy? You have a very good natural intensity. Sorry. Why don't you try that? It's going to open up some new routes for you in terms of like your development as an actor. So I went to do. I responded to like a Craigslist ad, something emerging comics, comedy night, emerging comics, and I met with the guy. And the first time I did stand-up, he put me on the main stage of the Comedy Store, which was at the time struggling. They didn't have any people, you know, they had like 20, 30 people at shows. So he was running so-called bringer show, that you invite all your friends and you get stage time, and the show is horrible, and they tell you you're great, but you're not. And the show sucks. And your friends have to suffer through it. And that's what I did. And the first time I went on stage, I was horrible. Then the second time I went on stage, I was I was better because I took a week. I got some coaching, and I actually had a pretty decent set. My second time ever in life, which actually you can find on YouTube. That's my second time I was on stage ever in my life.
Nice.
But after third or fourth time, I'm like, I can't invite all my friends all the time. And I was good in promoting. I was bringing friends from my acting class. They were coming to see me, but the show wasn't good. And I decided I can do it on my own. You know, I have people who come to see me. I can do much better show. I can give them much better show with better talent, and it's gonna be fun. And I'm gonna learn and progress and develop my acting chops a little bit more. And that's what happened. I teamed up with like a bunch of club promoters, so they were helping me out, sending like mass emails to a lot of different people. And my first show I did at the roof of a taco shop in Los Angeles, and I packed it. Then I went to a Flappers Comedy Club in Burbank, and I packed it on like Tuesday night, and the show was good. And I had Wayans brothers started coming in, and then Whitney Cummings started coming in, and then I received an email from Comedy Store because I played basketball. I played pickup basketball with one of the managers, and I think he said a word to the general manager. And Comedy Store at the time was struggling, so they invited me to Comedy Store, and I started running shows there. And back in 2014, 2015, those were some of the biggest shows. And in 2016, I got my agent, I got my manager, I started getting auditions, I started booking jobs. I booked, I think, recurring on Days of Our Lives. I booked a role on Startup in Puerto Rico with Martin Freeman. I booked Scorpion, and I booked Making History on Fox. And when that happened, I decided, you know what? Now it's time for me. Now I got what I wanted out of it, and it's a lot. Now it's time to focus on one thing, probably, which will be acting. It was a tough decision because people were thinking I'm crazy. Like, here's an interesting part. When you have your own show in a Comedy Store, and you have people like Joe Rogan, Bill Burr, Whitney Cummings, anybody, The Price is Right guy, Drew Carey, and they come in to do your show, you are in this weird position of power where people are literally kissing your ass because they want to be on the show, and you don't ask for it. You know, I never asked for that position of power. It was never my intention. My intention was to grow and to learn and to move on with a bunch of other people along the way and to make those creative relationships. But at some point, it becomes dangerous to you that you might fall into a trap that it could be your career instead of what you envisioned to do. And I was looking at some top producers in the game that, you know, there was a mutual respect between us. And I had some conversations with them, and they all believe, oh, it's just temporary. I'm just doing it for now. I'm gonna focus on acting. I'm gonna focus on doing my own comedy. But then I realized they're doing it for 20 years, and everybody sees them that way. So even if it was a huge honor for me to be at the Comedy Store every Friday night, to have my own show, and also there was another element that I saw a lot of people struggling. It was stressful because people would call me sometimes in the middle of the night, sending me tons of messages, trying to pull my leg a little bit, which I was very good, I think, in reading and not really getting emotional about it. But you become tired of it, of that energy, of the needy energy, which I understand because listen, like I also want to work. I understand that. but then here's one thing that happened that kind of speeded up the decision for me. And that's a tough thing. And that's why, like, one of my last acts at the Comedy Store, I was trying to establish a foundation for comics with depression to help them with free therapy. A bunch of the people I knew I did shows with killed themselves. That was for me like an alarm signal. That really got into my head. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I was pretty good with managing stress, managing people expectations. I had a clear vision of what I want to do. But when you have your friends die to take their own life, that is depressing. And I felt like I had to step away from it for at least a bit. And that's how the real acting career started in 2018.
Comedy can definitely be a difficult path choice. It takes.
Yeah, and I will tell you what, I almost came back in 2019. You know, I did a show at Laugh Factory, one show, which was like International Comedy Night, it was called. And I was thinking about, I'll be hosting that show with comedians that are from different backgrounds, with different ethnicity, like Canadians, British, Afghani, and I will have this like different accents, different styles, different cultures, like let's have a show like that once a month, and it will be fun, to supplement with acting. But then I booked my first job, first major job, that was The Hunt. I'm in New Orleans. I remember till this day, it was February 2019. I'm in New Orleans shooting The Hunt. I come to my trailer after a 12-hour day, where wonderful director Craig Zobel, that later directed Mayor of Easttown, with Ethan Suplee and wonderful cast. I come to my trailer, Betty Gilpin, and with Betty Gilpin, I come to my trailer and I see my phone, lit up that, Brody Stevens took his own life a night before. And that hit me so hard because I knew Brody. He was one of my friends. He was one of my favorite comedians. He was struggling for a while, and I felt like he needs more help. And I felt like he didn't get enough help from the community that he deserved and that he needed. And after he died, everybody was like, oh, Brody this, Brody that, Brody was my friend, such a tragedy. But I'm like, well, what did you do when he needed you? He was clearly struggling. And that broke my heart almost, So at that moment I decided, what, from now I can't get back into it. I will just focus on acting and let's see what happens.
On one of the more positive sides, since you had the opportunity to see so many incredibly talented comics, and there's so much of crossover between being a stand-up comedian and being an actor.
100%.
What are maybe one or two of the lessons that you learned from some of the people that you worked with while doing that?
Well, first of all, I went back to the Comedy Store a month ago, and it was incredible. I was able to connect with those people on a different level. We're friends with a bunch of them, but when you produce a show, some of those people see you as a producer more as a talent. Where now, of course, everybody sees me as a talent because I have a body of work to prove it. And it's been a while since I left, and it was very nice how they welcomed me back. And it's always going to be my second home in Los Angeles. It's always going to be a special place for me. I'm still friends with a bunch of them and very, very close and in touch and doing things. Ian Edwards, who is a great headliner. He's one of my best friends, and we watch soccer together sometimes. I join his podcast to talk about soccer. I used to do it more. Now I would say I don't have time to watch that many games. So my knowledge is not what it used to be when I was a professional. So that's why I don't do it as often anymore. But he's one of my best friends. We played actually soccer together last week with a bunch of young kids. We're two old guys playing soccer with the young kids.
Running around you in circles.
Yeah, we're just like, it was on the verge, the age difference was on the verge of creepiness, because we don't want to get too close, not to be, that's just a joke.
We swear everything's fine.
Exactly, right, exactly. So definitely Dean Del Rey, who used to be a musician, now he's a very good stand-up, doing shows with Mark Maron and Bill Burr. He was an inspiration to me because he started doing stand-up when he was 44. So when I decided to switch into acting at the age of 40, completely 100%, I thought about it. Like this guy changed his life at the age of 44 and decided this is the love of his life. This is what he wants to do for the rest of his life. And he went hard at it. He would have a notebook with, in his pocket, and he would put number of shows every day he did, and then he would come up with a number at the end of the year, and he would post that number. It's like this year I did 1,100 shows, or this year I did 900 shows, and so he was inspiration to me. His hard work and his commitment, how committed he was every day. I remember one time when I was still at the store, I asked him, Dean, where is Miss Del Rey? Like, is Miss Del Rey? And he said, comedy is Miss Del Rey. And that level of commitment, inspirational.
Yeah, that's pretty important. maybe almost as important as visiting our website, everybodylovespudding.com.
Yes.
Hey, I mentioned there was going to be an awkward thing right in the middle. No, but
You want to see awkward thing?
yeah, this is the awkward thing.
I'll tell the awkward thing. I used to love pudding myself, but I was diagnosed lactose intolerant at the beginning of the year, so I used to love pudding.
Well, sometimes we have to change as we get a little bit older, but what never changes is an interest in the wonderfully quirky and fun pop culture things that you can find on our website. You can, of course, see our upcoming interviews with wonderful people like Mr. Martin Harris. You can see the see the different movie reviews that we've done over the course of the last 4.5 seasons. You can get deep into the pop culture side of comic books with the Ultimate Comic Movie Database. Every film ever based on a comic strip or comic book, all cross-referenced for your easily digestible pleasure. And of course, you can get into the pop culture death counts. Find out how many people really did die in the most recent Thor: Love and Thunder film. We've got that up there. But more importantly, even than that, is you have to know how to find these wonderful people and follow them so that you can find out when their next new projects are coming out. If somebody were wanting to know exactly how to find you, Mr. Harris, what are the best ways to follow you?
And so the best way is on Instagram. It's Martin_Harris LA. Martin_Harris LA. I post about all my projects. Sometimes I post photos of animals, and I post also my list of favorite music albums of all time. Now I'm at 5,020.
Whoo!
Yeah,
That's a lot of albums.
that's a lot of albums.
We tend to limit our lists to 10 just because our memory can't go back past that.
Yeah, that's why I posted. So you can refresh my memory anytime I go back.
Oh, all right. So you've now completely committed to acting. This is going to be the thing that you're going to do. Now, I noticed one of your early IMDb credits, just as a small uncredited role, as you were on the set of Angels and Demons as a reporter. That had to be a lot of fun. How close did you get to see some of the major action bits on that film?
Oh, extremely close. I was there for 2 months. I was playing a reporter. I was in the mix with other reporters, except of the fact that I wasn't speaking. But you can see me in one of the opening scenes talking to the microphone, something, I guess. And yeah, I mean, at the time, I thought that's it, that I made it. I'm on Angels and Demons. I didn't know the distinction between being an extra and being an actor at this point of my career. Yeah.
That's always kind of a wonderful thing that I absolutely love to see, is just the sheer number of people that appear in films and television who are actually reporters in their day-to-day jobs, and then just kind of are also happen to be reporters in the parts that they do. So it's always kind of an entertaining.
Yeah, and so I had a hope that they're gonna upgrade me, because I was, at the time, I was still 100% reporter. It was my second month in Los Angeles. I was going to Lakers games, I was going to Clippers games, I was going to LA Galaxy games. So I was acting as a reporter, and I remember one PA came to me and pointed a finger at me. I think you'll be a star. which everybody hears at least 10 times, every single actor that moves to Los Angeles, for whatever reasons. If you're a pretty girl, you hear it for all the wrong reasons, but most of the time. But I ended up playing a reporter eventually on Staircase, and chasing Colin Firth out of the building, and running after him and throwing a bunch of lines at him and Sophie Turner. So that was fun, because that was a real role. It was a fun role, and I'm glad I did it, because it almost connects me with my past. Yeah.
One of the other early credits that I saw that I had to ask about, just because I'm a fan of, well, straight up B movies, or maybe the movie started as a big end film, but after a certain number of sequels might have not been quite that level anymore. And I saw that you were in Puppet Master 10. that has got to be just, all I could think of was like, that's kind of awesome, because that's like the perfect style of B movie in terms of you can't you just go in expecting this is going to be completely outrageous. Check out from reality. This is going to be a lot of fun. How did you get the voice role for that?
I think it was on one of the services for actors. They were looking for a German speaker. I think I voiced the Nazi character on it.
Right.
It was one of the many Nazi roles I played at the beginning of my career until now. Because in Amsterdam, I play a Nazi as well. I think I played Nazi 16 times, including like a bunch of videos and just low budget stuff at the beginning up until like more recent and major projects.
Is it ever kind of one of those things where you talk to different actors react different ways to, it's not really typecasting so much, but you have a certain like skill set or a certain vocal quality, your accent definitely plays into it, obviously. Is this like, this is the bountiful harvest, I love this, I'll always have this area that I can play a role, I know I can do it and I can do it well? Or is this like, well, this is nice, but it really would be nice, it's like, give me a rom-com, I want to be I want to be the accidental first boyfriend, give me that part for something different?
Yeah, it's changing. I can see it's changing because I would say at the very beginning, most of my roles were angry, aggressive, because it goes back to the intensity that Judith Weston mentioned. I think that's my natural thing. I don't have to raise it. I think I can naturally just go to that place and play the way it is. But I feel like my growth as an actor, especially since I went full time in 2018, was to be more versatile and play more different roles. And in the last 2 years, I had a bunch of different roles that I started being called and doing well on those type of characters where it's not just an angry guy, but a priest or an accountant. I can pull up those right now, and still not with a standard American accent, maybe for big script, for a long script, but at least for international characters.
Well, and talking about after 2018, I feel one of the great examples of that is the voice work you did for Call of Duty.
Oh, that's an angry voice. Yeah, that's an angry voice.
It is, but it's angry with nuance. It has levels. It has and just yes. that had to have, I don't know if that's maybe the thing you're best known for at this point, but
I would say up until Stranger Things, that was the thing. Yes.
There has to be just a huge number of people that the characters that we see in video games have a lasting impact on us because we spend 40, 50, 60, 70 hours on games, depending upon which one that you're playing. So does it kind of feel, I don't know about the word weird, but how does it feel to know that your role in that game will kind of last forever in its own separate space of pop culture?
So I wasn't aware of how much of a fan base it is and it will be, but when people figured out it's me voicing Kruger, which was iconic character in Call of Duty, I started getting messages through my Instagram account from all kinds of people. Some of them had avatars with Kruger on, and people till this day are asking me, like this day, I mean today, asking me if I'm gonna be in Modern Warfare 2, and I can tell only that I'm not able to reveal that.
Well, I know that the fan base for sure wants to see it because that, like I said, that it was a really fun character to have in the game, and you voiced that character so well.
Oh, thank you.
Seems like a shoe-in to me.
Yeah, they keep calling me back from Activision, which is fun, and over the years, and sometimes you have, because when people don't know your face but they know your voice and they know what the character is, sometimes it leads to funny situations. I went to a party where my friend was the host, and he's a visual effects guy, and he works for this company. He has a boss from South Africa who came to the party, pretty big guy in the visual effects world. and he mentioned, in the middle of the party, he mentioned that I'm working on different computer games, and the guy asked, which ones, and he said Call of Duty, and I could see his interest raising, like, which character? What did you do on Call of Duty? And when he mentioned Kruger, the guy lost his mind. He started kissing me in the forehead and taking selfies with me, and that's my favorite guy. This is my hero. You're my hero. And yeah, that was a bizarre experience, but a fun experience nevertheless. And up until Stranger Things, that was, I would say, the only time I had fans, so to speak. And now I have also Stranger Things fans. So there are two groups of fans.
Well, you had a great part in that show. That was a really fun section of that particular season. I mean, it's always difficult when you divide the story into groups of separate people, but that just gives, I feel, that the creators of the story a chance to branch out with a bunch of other actors and be able to kind of bring in some other fun stuff. What was it like being on set with something that already had such a huge following?
Surreal. I was super paranoid that I'm going to lose it at the very last moment because of COVID. So I remember when I reached a hotel in Atlanta, I locked myself in there for, the quarantine was 2 weeks, and I was only stepping out by myself, walking around with my headphones and listening to music or reading a book, trying to avoid people at every possible cost. When there was someone in the elevator, I would wait. I was cooking in my hotel room one time. Too much smoke caused the smoke alarm to go off, and people came to my room, and I'm like, stay away, don't come close. I didn't want to take any risks, but the first day I got on set and finally, signed my deal and everything, it was surreal because I was such a big fan of the show. Like, I'll tell you a funny story. So on the New Year's Eve, a year prior to that, 2020, I had my wishes, my New Year's resolutions, and I said I would love to be on Stranger Things and Better Call Saul and a big movie. And within 5 months, I'm on Stranger Things, Better Call Saul, Amsterdam, and Grey Man. So it works, guys. It works.
Yeah, I like it. You look around, see a small cricket in a top hat somewhere, granting wishes of some kind. That you are in like a lot of stuff that's all coming out all at the same time, touching so many big projects. Now, I know a lot of people that watch the films don't always understand the time frames that are involved in creating those projects. So, I mean, we see that, okay, you're in Amsterdam, you're in The Gray Man, you're in Stranger Things, Better Call Saul. It's all happening all at the same time. But in your timeline, how did those kind of interweave? Were they like back to back to back, simultaneous, or were they kind of spread out?
Back to back to back. That was the best 3 months of my career I ever had, and hopefully I can repeat it soon. Started with Amsterdam. In most random circumstances, I got that role, but I got it, and I stayed on set for 2 weeks. A lot of stuff. There were a lot of opportunities on that set to, when you did your job well, to be rewarded for that, because it was in the middle of pandemic, and I think there were a lot of precautions. There were a lot of things they wouldn't probably do in nowadays. With where we are right now, or where we were 3-4 years ago. Another friend of mine, he was booked for 1 day. He stayed 18 days and has a substantial part in the film. So he was doing a lot of all improv, changing things, adding things, and that benefited me, and it benefited him and a bunch of other people. Not necessarily some other people, but I feel good. Like, my comedy experience, my comedy training came to fruition because I'm able to do things on the fly, to change things on the fly. I have that skill that somebody throws me a suggestion, and I'm able to adjust right away, where some people are very method and without preparation and coming in with a certain mindset, they are not able to make that switch. For me, it's natural. I can make that switch anytime, and that comes from 4 years doing comedy. And that's probably one of the best benefits of doing that. So yeah, it was Amsterdam, it was Stranger Things after that. Then they added 1 more week of Stranger Things for me, and there was a danger I'm gonna miss The Gray Man. Literally, I was released from my last day on set on Stranger Things, 7:30 p.m. in Atlanta. I caught my last flight to Los Angeles at 9 or 10. Burley, and then I had to be on the fitting next morning in Long Beach. So that was a little bit stressful, but it all worked out, and I was able to do it. And then after that, after the Gray Man, I did the Lakers show, and after the Lakers show, I did the Better Call Saul.
Wow.
Yeah,
That is nuts. That's a lot. That's a lot in
yeah.
a short period of
So
time.
3 months, 3 months.
And not just a lot, but that's a lot of different kind of genre stuff too to kind of switch between.
Completely different, yeah.
So maybe you can settle a dispute. Now, I know it's clickbaity, but all of the different little news stories that come up for Amsterdam, saying that one particular actor might have been singing a lot louder than, say, some other actors were on set. Were you in a position where you got to be part of that aspect of it?
No, I wasn't there when they were filming with Taylor actually, and
Oh,
that's a bummer because yeah, I mean a lot of my friends asked me if I saw Taylor, and I did not. I did see Christian. I worked with Christian, and what an amazing experience. He was in character for the whole day. He was able to, even during the lunch break, to walk and talk as a character. Like even regular stuff, he would talk to you like I do right now, but he would just use the mannerism of the character. And I think he mentioned it in one of the Q&As. I don't remember if it was in person when I was in LA during the LA premiere, or I saw it on one of the clips, but he said that he was looking for inspiration for his character Bert. And one day he saw this random guy in downtown Los Angeles walking certain way and making certain facial expressions, and he just borrowed from him the movement and facial expression for Bert. And he never met the guy, he never saw the guy again, but he used that guy as a blueprint for the movement of his one of the iconic performances, because I think it's one of his best performances. I think he's absolutely amazing in this film.
that's saying a lot. He's
Yeah.
definitely. Well, who would you, if you had your choice of choice, you've now had a chance to work with some just fantastic talent. Is there a writer or a director or an actor that you just like, I would just absolutely love to have a chance to work with this person? Who would that be?
Steven Spielberg, 100%.
Uh, Good choice.
Yeah, Steven Spielberg, he's a legend. I grew up watching his movies. I mean, I admire the guy. He created so many different genres and subgenres, and he was able to create those big blockbusters, not repeat something that was created before, which a lot of people do those days, but to create original to transform the film industry the way he did. And of course, there are some films and some directors who have more, I would say, art-driven projects that individually I like maybe more, but as a full career span, I think for me Spielberg is the guy. He's just one of those. He's the one guy that I would love to be on set with. Yes, 100%.
That makes sense to me. One of the other things that I saw that you did was some ADR work on some Marvel projects, and of
Oh, a
course,
lot of different projects. It's most of them are not even listed yet.
right. So that got me to thinking also, considering a lot of what we do is talk about the intersection of comic books and film and television. So one of the common questions that I also tend to ask is, again, if you had your choice, I don't know if you're a comic book fan or if you're just you've seen it on the periphery, but if you had a chance to play any comic book character that you could ever play, who would you like to play?
So I'll give you a complex answer. I grew up watching James Bond films, and I'm a huge fan. Actually, I'm rewatching all the films right now, and I reread the whole catalog of Ian Fleming books during the pandemic.
Nice.
So I know it's not a comic book, but for me, James Bond, 100%. I would love to be a villain. Your question, I would love to work with Steven Spielberg. The second part of my answer would be, I would love to be the villain of a James Bond movie. With comic books, I actually grew up reading Polish comic books. There were certain characters in Polish comic books that I liked. So I didn't grow up with Marvel stuff and those characters. I don't know. It's a tough question. I don't think there is one particular comic book character from this country, our country, that I fully relate to.
What about from Poland?
Yeah, they had some funny characters. The one was an ape that talked. I don't know if I can pull that one off. Maybe with makeup.
They're
There were
CGI.
two medieval knights. When one was small and smart, the other one was large and a little silly. I could probably pull off one of those. Yeah.
I like it. I like it because that's a lot. There's a lot of crossover that most people don't realize between comics from the all
You
over
know
the
what
world.
comic? You know what comic book I read as a kid? There was one American comic book I read, Lucky Luke. Remember Lucky Luke?
I do.
Okay, that's the guy. That's my joke.
That may throw some people for a loop too, because that's one of those characters that most people are not really familiar with anymore. And those are the best though, because you have so much opportunities to kind of make the performance yours whenever
Yeah, why people forgot about Lucky Luke? Why there's no Lucky Luke movies, right? There
eh,
should be at least one Lucky Luke series somewhere on one of the platforms.
I don't know. You would think so. I mean, but some of my favorite strips are just now some of them getting converted. Like I was a big fan of Bloom County, which was a comic strip that ran in most newspapers for a very long time, and eventually converted to Opus and other things. But it's finally getting a treatment as an animated series. So sometimes you just got to wait for the good stuff to show up. And
Or did Lucky Luke say or did something inappropriate? Did he?
I don't think so. I don't.
Okay, good. I hope he didn't do anything bad. So he's not canceled, you know?
No, no. That's a different episode conversation for sure. Some of the things that the comics have done that maybe would not translate so well.
Yeah.
But so what can you tell me about to finish things up? You're obviously people need to watch Stranger Things. The first of all, if you haven't seen it, what rock have you been living under? But and of course, The Gray Man in Amsterdam, just amazing, both of them, great pieces. But do you have anything else that you can tell us about that is maybe coming out soon that you're going to be part of?
Yeah, I can tell cryptically. Marvelous Miss Maisel, new season will be last season. I'm gonna be in this one, and it's actually a very good role that I'm very proud of. Could be one of my biggest ones so far, and I enjoyed everything about that process. Working with that cast, well, what an amazing group of actors! Like,
It's another great show.
yeah, and I did it in New York, and I fell in love with New York again. I haven't been to New York for 12 years, and now I went to do Miss Maisel, and a couple months later, I went to the premiere of Amsterdam, and both times I had amazing time. And there's not even a debate between LA pizza and New York pizza. It's not even close. It's a different food. Let's put that out of the way. It's a different food.
Well, and it is different, but that didn't tell us which you prefer.
Oh, whew, New York all day, every day. But at the same time, for my personal health, LA because I just don't eat it. So in New
Right.
York, I eat pizza every day, and
Well,
that's dangerous. Yeah.
I like that answer. All pizza is good pizza. We often ask that question too. You just beat me to it.
Yeah, but New York pizza, it's something else about it. Like not even in Italy, it's that good. New York pizza is the best pizza in the world.
It is pretty awesome. Well, I cannot tell you how much I have appreciated you coming on the show and
Thank you
sharing
so
some
much.
of your time and stories. Um, do you think that maybe in the future, if you're going to be in something else, you'll come back and visit the Pudding Guys again?
I would love to, and I might try some pudding to see if it doesn't kill me first.
Tapioca. Start with tapioca. It's mild. It'll
Oh,
be
here
fine.
you go.
There you go. But thank you again, and we hope that everybody gets to see how awesome you are in
Thank you.
these movies. It's great.